Small boys.
You gotta make noise, you gotta like. Sweet as. Trying to get some free stuff or what? What? Yeah. I haven't got anything yet. You can go start doing a round, I mean. Ready. Well, thanks for coming in, boys. See you soon. How old are you guys? Yeah, right. So tonight, after AFTA every year, we have a big party, and the party's always at Arnie's house. So last year, actually was the first time I hung out with Arnie, and he corrupted me ever since.
Middle water. So usually the boys will get in my backyard, and there's a spot that my son fishes that he's got 3 now.
Middle water flat.
Middle water flathead every time.
Sammy Hitsky. G'day guys. Alright, we're going to film this last bit of stuff with Duncan, and then we're done, and it's beer o'clock.
Hi, man.
What are we talking about?
Rods.
Yes. Funny that, we've got lots of rods, and you want to talk about rods.
Yeah. Alright, so we're back in the Zenaq zone here. We have Dunk, who is the walking fishing encyclopedia. Duncan obviously runs Fishhead Tackle on the Gold Coast. You can find it online, fishhead.com.au. Yeah. I met Dunk originally because I bought a Zenaq from him, and since then it's led to me being sponsored by Zenaq and getting all those rods to try and use, and for me the whole experience with Zenaq's been amazing, and I love the rods, and it's all thanks to this guy. So big thank you for that.
All from that first Zenaq.
Yeah, from that first rod. So
once you start, you can't stop.
Yeah, and that's what we've been talking to people here all day. And one of the big things, people are like, oh, these feel amazing. Once you get one, a rod of that level, going back to using a normal fishing rod isn't quite the same. So it's exactly like a sports car, I guess. If you drive a normal car, then you can buy a really expensive car. You don't want to go back to your shitty high-ace van. We've got Dunk here, we're going to utilise it, and we're going to talk some stuff that a lot of questions I get asked and a lot of questions Duncan gets asked. Obviously, GT fishing
is always the big one. Yeah.
What is it?
What rod do I need?
What rod do we need?
What rod?
So what rod do we need, Duncan?
Well, there's a few rods in the Zenaq range. Everyone usually goes straight for the biggest, heaviest, most powerful rod.
Yeah.
So that's the big one, the broomstick, which is probably not the rod that most people need, but it's the one that they like to want to use. So the heaviest rod, Tabizo 8200, it's optimised for lures from about 120, 130 grams right through to over 200 grams. It can operate some pretty big poppers up to about 180 grams, and then stick baits from there right through to 200 on. A lot of people get confused about whether is it a stick bait rod, is it a popper rod, is it a bit of both. In the case of Zenaq, most of their rods are what you would call all-rounders. They have some stiffness for working poppers, but also some suppleness in the tip for doing stick baits as well. So what you get with your heavy rods, so you've got some movement there in the tip, so that's the bit that helps you when you're working your stick baits. As you move your way down the rod, it gets progressively stiffer and stiffer. So that's what helps pull the poppers through the water. You can get rods where they're quite soft all the way through, so they're very stick bait specific, and you can find other rods that are quite stiff all the way to the tip, and they're very popper specific. So depending on what you like, there's all sorts of different good options out there. But the way Zenaq approaches it is to have medium all-rounder and a heavy all-rounder. So typically guys who have a couple of rods, they tend to use more of the stick baits on the medium rod and then more of the poppers on the heavy rod. If I've got big stick baits to throw, I definitely still use it on the big rod.
Can I just say one thing? This is why we have Duncan here, because obviously that is a shitload more technical than I'll ever be. Yeah, we can get a bit deeper with the learning here. And you're going to hurt my back, are you?
Yeah. Still got the bad back?
Oh, I've always got a bad back.
Our initial bending action, we've got that nice, slightly more supple section for the working the stick baits. And then as we start to pull into it, we start to hit the support area there for working the poppers. And then as we go down and we start lifting on it, Johnny goes down and backwards to try and get the best out of the rod.
There we go.
The rods can handle a phenomenal amount of lifting if the angler is up to it.
Not that up to it.
Yeah. I think at some stage we're all not that up to it.
We should get Arnie over here.
We have to go anyway, yeah. For that reason, that's why for a lot of people, you want to go the big GT rod, but you also want a rod that you can actually fish with all day long.
Yeah.
So if your needs are for big lures on the big fish, then this is a great option. But more often than not, going towards the medium rod. It still has lots of power, but much easier to use all day long when you've got to cast hour on hour. Sometimes you have to do a whole lot of casting.
Yeah.
It's just casting all day, cast. It is just so much easier if you've got a rod that...
I think that's a really good point as well, is that to be realistic with your expectations as well, whereas you can go out and go, I want to do this, and this, and maybe your expectations are set a little bit too high. So going, like Duncan said, going with a slightly lighter rod that actually is comfortable to use all day, so you're not just smashing yourself, is a really good option, something to think about.
And at the end of the day, the person who usually catches the most fish is the person who has the lure in the water the longest.
Yeah.
So if you get to mid-afternoon and you're really just having to have a lie down and picking up the light tackle rod, maybe tossing a couple of little plastics over the side, you're not going to be the person at 4 p.m. who catches the monster GT that comes along right at the end of the day. Big rods require a fair bit of commitment, maybe some trips to the gym, whereas more medium tackle rods... Yeah, well, obviously, guys who spend a huge amount of time in the gym. But for most people, something that's a bit more usable means that you can fish for longer.
And what's this one?
Tabizo 83 150. So we're talking lures that go from about 90 grams through to around that 150, 160 gram mark. So what I would call normal size GT lures, which is 120, 130 gram stuff, is really what the majority of the lures people are using for long periods of time.
That's obviously the right. You would have seen that in a lot of my videos before that I run. I used to run a 14,000 size reel on it of that particular brand, and now I've been running a 5,500 size Soul Tiger,
which is the same reel I use.
But I've also used a bigger one.
It's on that crossover. You can use the mid-size reel or the big reel. It'll balance nicely either way. Once you go to the big rod, then big reel is better.
Sweet. Alright, the next ones we're going to talk about is a bunch of rods that I really like and I've only recently just started using. These are more like your light tackle flats, reef flats rods. You can use them, barra in the dams. I've even actually caught mangrove jack on this rod here, which is very rare because I don't really catch many of them. But these rods for your everyday fishing, all that light tackle, barra, tuna, mackerel, kingfish, snapper even, all that kind of stuff. These are amazing.
So these sorts of rods, the long cast and the twitch is the heavy ones called the twitch. They're the sort of rods that you tend to use as, say, a heavier bay rod or a light offshore rod, so they get a bit of double duty all over the place. So they tend to fit a bunch of different roles and they're pretty versatile. So handy rods to have to use in a lot of places. So the first one is the 761. So that's rated up to P 2.5, about 25-pound line. 7'6", so a bit longer than your average rod, and it's got quite a soft, supple tip. So the idea is obviously casting smaller lures a long way, and then a ton of power down low. As we work our way down, there's a good solid section at the bottom. So
that's fucked. That's wild. It's a sick little rod. I actually use this heaps in Vanuatu as well, just casting light stuff for a small yellowfin, and it was incredible.
This one's one of my favourites. You haven't got this one yet, but maybe one day you can play the cards right. A little bit stiffer tip. So
I noticed that first thing I felt.
So a little bit longer, a little bit stiffer. So we've got that, again, that not super fast taper, but just that bit of stiffness through the tip there to really sling the lures a long way, and then more power as you go down the line.
That's wild for that rod. P2 to 3.
Yeah, keeping it lightweight, but still plenty of power for smaller pelagics, kingfish, little tunas, mackerels, that sort of thing. Then we go from there to the next one up. So we come to the third rod in the series, the Quixote Twitch. So slightly different concept from the other two. This one's a touch shorter, a little bit faster taper in the tip, so it still has a wide variety of lure sizes that it cast, but the power ramps up a lot faster, a lot more grunt down the bottom. As well as being good on coral flats, catching small pelagics and things like this. This also doubles up for throwing big plastics at snapper or large vibration lures and things like that. So little bit more versatility for the deeper stuff, and it's an absolute long tail slayer. Things that are lightweight lures but bigger fish.
I actually used this rod a heap in the Saudi Arabia trip, and catching like bluefin trevally, red bass and stuff in the shallows, and it was amazing. There was like, I think the lures I was throwing like 40 to 60 gram lures, and that thing was incredible.
Yeah, because the power ramps up a lot faster through the middle of the flank. When you're doing those shallow flats fish and you get that sudden bite, the fish come out, hit the lure and they're straight away turning to head back. When the midsection of the rod is a lot stiffer, it sets the hook.
It jams them straight away,
It's faster than you can physically react.
Yeah.
The rod is already jamming the hook in and trying to get the fish's head coming in.
Yeah, right.
So I find for someone who's a little bit slow, like me,
What are you trying to say?
the fish is bitten and it's already heading back home, and before I've actually reacted, the rod, because the carbon is nice and crisp and firm, it's already setting the hooks and helping me pull the fish's head out. So slightly slower anglers like myself, put some more fish in the boat.
Yeah.
So with this rod compared to the other two, we've got that faster taper on the tip. So all bend in this really first section of the rod, and then it starts to ramp up through here, which is where it really helps with the hook sets and keeping fish's heads coming in your direction. So you've got that initial bit, and then it starts to fold down.
It's incredible the power of that little thing, and you hang off the end of it, and it is ridiculous.
What reel are you running on yours?
This one, I've got a 4,000 Saltiga on it.
Yeah, that's what I got on mine too. So yeah,
4,000 Saltiga on that one. I've been running with, I think, 40-pound Taz on. And it's been working in trees. Alright, the next ones that we're going to talk about, you guys would have seen these a while ago when I got them. These are the Akari range of light jigging rods. These are the ones, if you remember me rambling on ages ago, with the carbon core construction. Pretty innovative way of making rods, and Duncan explained this to me the other day of how it actually works when the rod's bending, and it's incredible. I'm not going to go into it obviously because Duncan's the man to explain this kind of shit, but these rods have been really good in the time I've been using them, probably the last 6 months. So if you're in the market for anything light jigging, this technology is really worth it. Techman.
Okay, Techman. So what makes the Akari a bit different is, rather than being a traditional tubular blank, it actually has a solid core running through it. So generally when you build a lightweight rod, like a slow pitch style jig rod, the way that they build a rod is they have a mandrel, and then the carbon is wrapped around that, and then the mandrel comes out and you end up with a hollow blank. So making these lightweight jig rods, you end up with rods that are quite thin in the walls, and they're lightweight, very responsive, they give great action to the jigs, but because they're so thin and lightweight, they're not always that durable. So Zenaq's way around that is to build a carbon, like a mandrel, the carbon mandrel, and then they wrap the high elastic springy carbon over the top of it, and that makes a rod that is essentially solid all the way through, so it makes it much more durable. So with the a hollow rod, when you bend it, it goes from being round to a more oval shape, and if you bend it too far, then it snaps. So what having the solid core does is, as it bends, it keeps that round shape. So it helps it, basically keeps everything in shape for longer, allows you to do more with it.
That's like, Duncan explained that to me yesterday, and I've been using this for a while, and that's the simplest and best way that I've heard it explained, and it's like just a really easy way to get your head around it, and why that carbon core, and you can see the benefits of having that as opposed to just having the hollow traditional rod blank.
Yeah, so it works really well on these light style rods. Zenaq has been working on this for quite a few years, and they're looking at whether they can bring it out into other rods as well, but it's particularly suited to all these lighter style jigging rods. It works extremely well on them.
Sweet. So there's several different models in the Akari range. I have been using this one, which is the FS64 5.5. So that's P2. So far my experience with it, I've used it snapper fishing. I've actually caught kingfish on this as well, which is probably pushing it to its limits a little bit. Spanish mackerel up north, longtails, all those kind of light jig, northern reef fish, coral trout, all that kind of stuff. So
now that we've had the heavier ones, now they've gone down to the ultralight version. So this is the P1, P1.5 style one. So jigs under 120 grams and down as low as like 40 or so grams as well. So this is the first one we've had. You've got one of the first ones and I've got the other one of them. So
The super noodle.
yeah, the super noodle. So watch this space. We're going to go and catch some fish on it now.
Yeah, I haven't had a snapper session so far this year, so when we finally get out there, I'm going to be using that and put it through its paces to see how we go. That's it. We've only shown you a few rods, but these are the kind of the most specific ones that we get asked questions about the most. So yeah, any more questions, you can fire them to me. If they're super technical, I'll annoy him and fire them onto him. Otherwise, like I know here today we've spoken about BKK and we've spoken about Zenaq, and last time I spoke about these two brands, I had a few dudes heckle me in the comments saying like, you're sponsored, you're biased, you're full of shit. So to you people that say that, yeah, it appears like that, and yeah, I am sponsored by these guys, and I'm sponsored by them for a reason. Like I said, with BKK and also Zenaq, the only reason I got sponsored by them is because I went out and bought their products first, and I bought their products first because I always wanted to use their products. So, and from there it spiraled into that scenario of sponsorship. The big thing for me with all of the sponsorship stuff like that, they'd have to pay me a shitload of money to use something I didn't want to use. So I would prefer to stick with brands and use gear that I actually want to use. I believe that it is the best gear that I possibly can use, and especially in this case, they don't get much better than this, mate. Zenaq for me, like I said, through Duncan, and massive thank you to Duncan for that. And the Zenaq guys themselves, they took me to Japan, I've met them all, and it's a family-run business. I'd rather work with companies and be sponsored by companies like this where it is a family-owned business. They take extreme pride in their product and they make it all in-house. So for me, I'd much rather work with companies like that who are actual people than big mega companies. We won't mention any names, but you probably know what I'm talking about. So yeah, that's just to you few people that wrote comments saying I'm giving biased bullshit reviews. So I always try and give the most honest feedback into products. Like, if something breaks, I'll show it and I'll give you a reason why. But yeah, that's just covering a very few people in there, but it had to be said. And yeah, there we go, and then the tip comes off. Thanks very much, Dunk, and you can obviously find Duncan at fishhead.com.au. The website link is in the description below. The Zenaq website link will be down there as well. Check it out, and like I said, once you get one, you won't be going back to no BCF fishing rod, mate. I think that pretty much wraps up everything we had to do here. Yeah. At AFTA. So, yeah. Thanks for watching. That's AFTA. I'm tired. I'm ready for a beer. Let's go home. Thank you. Bye-bye. What'd you get?
Like, I've got millions of hats. I don't even know, I can't even fit another book of these in. I've got millions of, I think I'm sick of love.
You're a winner.
Yes.
Well done, mate.